transgender is not an immutable trait, which means a unchanging trait. So even if transgender were a coherent category of people, it is not an immutable trait. In her briefing in Reed, then lawyer Ruth Bader Ginsburg argued that it is presumptively impermissible to distinguish on the basis of an unalterable identifying trait over which the individual has no control and for which he or she should not be disadvantaged by law. She was, of course, talking about sex, meaning the difference between women and men, and the unalterable identifying trait she referred to was the fact of her client Sally Reed being female. In contrast, the word transgender is anything but an unalterable identifying trait over which an individual has no control. To equate it with discrimination and other ill treatment that women receive on account of being female would be a mistake of the highest proportions. It would be a grave insult to women. Again, we have to put this in quotes and parentheses, adult human females. Used to not have to do that. Used to be clear. You know, before we had intentional and unintentional women,
Yeah.
or female and male women in law and floating around the culture. It would effectively gut the entire line of cases that establish women-based rights.
As the court below noted, to establish a new classification, plaintiffs must show that transgender individuals exhibit obvious, immutable, or distinguishing characteristics that define them as a discrete group. It is difficult to see, at least at this stage of the case, how transgender identity fits that description. Unlike existing suspect classes, transgender identity is not a definitively ascertainable at the moment of birth. It is not necessarily immutable, as the stories of detransitioners indicate, and as plaintiffs do not dispute. End quote.
To be sure, there are plenty of people who refer to themselves as quote unquote transgender. However, as detransitioners demonstrate, many such people later come to accept themselves the sex they are. There's simply nothing immutable or unchangeable about claiming to have quote unquote transgender identity, whatever quote unquote transgender might mean.
For her.
It becomes so clear, you're
Yeah.
just again,
Right?
gobsmacked
I'm
that we've gotten
imagining
this far.
I'm imagining the judge reads that, and in pops an image of a man in this ridiculous woman costume. And good for her.
Mhm.
Just getting that little brainworm in there, right?
Some people think that distinguishing and discrimination is always bad, but if they give it a thought, they realize that we wouldn't be able to function without that capacity, and that you can't have a good law or a fit for purpose law if it's very unclear who it applies to and who it doesn't.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, especially when it's going to affect another group of people where it's quite clear who they are. It's, male, female, boy, girl, man, woman. Okay, here we go.